couple of days, I have to say. But I was thinking earlier on, I've been uh, having a few words here and there, and thanking the Lord for his bounty and his hand upon me. It occurred to me earlier that I'm pretty sure that it does say, that Jesus Christ does say that, you know, to love God with all your heart and all your mind and all your soul, and then to love your neighbor as yourself. If you do those two things, you are you're good to go, kind of thing. You have complied with the law, as it were. Or you've walked in the will of the Father. I don't know how you would explain it, but you have conducted yourself righteously. So many of the things that, you know, we deny ourselves, as it were, or we feel that we should deny ourselves, and certainly many times in the Bible, it would seem that that would be the right way to proceed. And perhaps it is good that we do deny ourselves those things. I don't really, that's not the issue. But they're not actually injunctions, biblical injunctions. There are a set of injunctions, of course, in Exodus, I think, mainly, and also Leviticus, of course. There's quite a few, isn't there? There's about, I don't know, I think there's a few hundred of them. And, you know, some of them seem a bit archaic perhaps now, but they all have a significance, I think, in our modern life. But I suppose you could say that Jesus Christ, he came to confirm the law, didn't he? But then he gave those two, he made those two statements, you see. So this is the spirit of the law, really, isn't it? I would say. I don't know. These are just thoughts. I'm no theologist. Doesn't really matter, but it seems to me something like that. I do think that's just so fundamental. You know, if you love your neighbour as yourself, and if you love God, and that's your main focus in your life, you know, the love of God, I don't think you're going to go too wrong, really. They do seem to be very good principles, you know, absolutely. Foundational principles. I don't know. There's a lot of rules and regulations that people cook up for themselves, I think, and there's biblical support for them, you know. I'm not saying there isn't. You'll see them being, you know, broken in the Bible also. Some of them. There's places where I do draw the line. For example, concerning the practice of sorcery, which I'm sort of stepping back a little bit from Castaneda at the moment, and I think it's a good thing, because his fifth book has introduced women sorcerers, and effectively these women are witches, you see. Again, I'm not so sure about women getting involved in this sort of these sorts of practices, because it's so close to witchcraft, isn't it? That's the problem. I don't know, you know, and it probably is close to witchcraft for men to be involved as well. The problem with Castaneda is, you see, that he is not really a Bible-believing Christian in any measure. And so he went into these wilds really without the level of protection that I believe is absolutely fundamental if you're going to start getting into different realms of reality and altered states of consciousness and this sort of thing, because it is, a potentially dangerous territory. It must be, because this is where the enemy prowls. And one of the practices which Castaneda is not subjected to, but it is related to him, and it's repeated in another book. One of the practices adopted by the, what do they call the fellow? Not the teacher and the, I forget, there's another name for them now. What do they call them? I can't remember any. There's a teacher and there's a counterpart, and who take the acolyte under their tutelage, as it were. And one of the practices that is used is to force the acolyte to dress as a member of the opposite sex. That's part of the rite. No, I'm wrong to call it part of a rite. It's not a rite. It's a technique that's used to get people to shift their, what they call the assemblage point, to enable you to see reality from different perspectives. And this is where acting is interesting, because this is what acting is. This is why actors talk about the craft, because acting is a form of witchcraft, you see. But we all act all the time. It's a complex issue, you see. I don't think it's something that you can just say, acting therefore is evil. I think, like in everything, we have to look in the mirror and see, okay, people say, well, I'm not consciously portraying a fiction, as it were. But at the same time, we don't pour out our true feelings in polite society sometimes, do we? We adopt a certain decorum, as it were. We adopt and we exude a certain style, as it were. We share certain things and we avoid sharing others. So the practice of acting, I can understand that it would give. The idea is, you see, to diminish, funnily enough, to diminish the self. So this isn't a narcissistic acting. The reason that one does it is to diminish the self. So once it becomes clear that one can have two separate identities, public identities, and move freely between them, then there's a chance to slide down between them, as it were, and connect to something more foundational than a mere presentation of external appearance. I think this is the theory. And, as it is used, certainly, this is part of the acting profession. There's no question of it. But, for me, the idea of changing gender would be unacceptable, because that, to me, that is absolutely anti-biblical. I would never contemplate anything like that or do it, I just couldn't do it. It seems offensive, something like that. But of course, they do it. The people that own and control the world, as it were, or whoever it is. I mean, the world is controlled, of course, by God, but the adversary in his ravenings is doing this greatly at the moment, as of course, as we can see. But so they do it because it gives them access to a realm of power. We need to understand this. They're not the when they gather in their temples, they're not ineffectual. Uh, the ones that are ineffectual are, unfortunately, many Christians, because we're not really praying, um, as it were, and praising in earnest. I think this is a little bit of the problem. The church has become a bit of a sort of a placeholder. It's become a bit of a placeholder. And I do urge my brothers and sisters, if they're still involved in any kind of a church, just leave it. Um, the church is not really working any longer. We need to bring our faith into our homes and into our streets. This would be my understanding. I don't know. There's me preaching away, for heaven's sake. God bless everybody.